You are wearing clothes right now, almost certainly. And you didn't think about it. You got dressed this morning on autopilot, the way you have every single day of your life. It's so automatic that it feels like a law of nature. Of course you're wearing clothes. What else would you be doing? Now go look out the window. Every other living thing out there, every bird, every squirrel, every insect, every dog being walked past your house is fine, completely, permanently fine. None of them own anything. None of them are cold. None of them are embarrassed, and not one of them has ever had to decide what to wear. They came pre-installed with the only body covering they'll ever need. We're the only ones who have to get dressed. The single strangest animal on the planet, in that respect. We are the naked ape who invented a solution to being naked, and then built an entire global industry around it, and then invented seasonal fashion trends on top of that. So here's the question, why? Why did humans, alone out of every species on Earth? Because we weren't always like this. For the overwhelming majority of our existence, hundreds of thousands of years, humans were nothing at all, and it was completely fine. So something changed. Somewhere back there, a human put something on for the first time and never stopped. And here's what I love about this story. Figuring out when that happened was one of the trickiest puzzles in all of archaeology, because clothing rots. It leaves nothing behind. So scientists had to solve it sideways, using a clue so weird and so brilliant that when I first heard it, I laughed out loud. The answer involves lice. It genuinely does. Stay with me. Before we can ask why we got dressed, we have to ask a much stranger question. Why did we take our fur off in the first place? Because that's what happened. You are a mammal, and mammals have fur. Your close relatives are covered in it. Somewhere back down the line, your ancestors were covered in it too. And then at some point, we lost it. Which from an evolutionary point of view seems like the dumbest possible move. Free insulation. You are voluntarily becoming worse at surviving the cold. Except, and here's the thing, you're not actually naked. Not technically. Look closely at your arm. You are still covered in hair. It's just fine, short, and pale enough that you can't see it from a distance. We didn't lose our hair roots. We kept nearly all of them and just turned the volume way down. So the real story isn't humans lost their fur, it's humans kept the fur and made it useless, which only makes sense if being cooler mattered more than being warmer. And that's exactly the leading explanation. Picture the environment our ancestors evolved in. Hot, open, sun-blasted country. And picture what those ancestors started doing, walking and moving long distances under that sun for hours. Now, the problem with a thick fur coat when you're working hard in the heat isn't the cold, it's that you cook. Fur traps heat, and a big brain and a hard-working body generate a lot of it. Overheating will kill you far faster than a chilly night will, so the solution was radical. Strip the coat and switch to a completely different cooling system, sweating. Humans sweat across almost the whole body, and as that sweat dries, it carries the heat away brilliantly. But it only works if the sweat can actually evaporate off skin, rather than getting trapped in a mat of fur. Bare skin plus sweat glands is one of the best cooling systems in the animal kingdom, and it let our ancestors keep moving in conditions that force most animals into the shade. So we didn't lose our fur by accident. We traded it. We gave up our built-in blanket in exchange for a built-in air conditioner. Because in the world we came from, overheating was the bigger threat. Great deal. Fantastic deal. Right up until the moment our ancestors walked somewhere cold. Here's where it gets awkward. Humans did not stay in the warm places. Our ancestors kept moving north into Europe and Asia, into places with real winters. And they carried with them a body that had been carefully built for heat. Long limbs, bare skin. A cooling system so effective it was now actively working against them. Walking into a cold climate with a body designed for the tropics is a bit like moving to the Arctic in a summer wardrobe and just hoping it works out. And it does not work out. A bare human in genuine cold is in serious trouble fast. We have no thick fur, no blubber layer, and we can't hibernate. Our fine body hair does essentially nothing. Physically, we are very badly equipped for winter, which raises an obvious question. How on earth did we end up living in every cold place on the planet? We cheated. Instead of waiting for evolution to give us a fur coat back, which would have taken hundreds of thousands of years we didn't have, we did something no other animal has ever managed. We took the fur off other animals and put it on ourselves. Think about how bold that is. The problem was I don't have enough insulation. The solution was that animal over there has plenty. That single idea, that you can identify a useful property in another creature, remove it, and install it on your own body, is one of the most quietly game-changing things our species has ever done. It's the moment we stopped being limited to the body we were born with, and it worked so well that it fundamentally changed where humans could live. Clothing wasn't a comfort upgrade. Clothing was a passport. It's how a tropical animal ended up thriving in a world of ice. Which brings us to the real mystery. When did this actually start? Here's the frustrating thing. If you want to know when humans invented stone tools, that's easy. Stone doesn't rot. We've got millions of them lying around. Pottery, same. Bones, same. Clothes are made of skin, fur, plant fiber, and animal cord. Every single one of those things is organic, which means bacteria eat it. Leave a leather piece of clothing in the ground for a few thousand years and there is simply nothing left. No fossils, no artifacts, just absence. So we have this enormous, important, world-changing invention and effectively zero direct evidence of the early versions. It's a genuine big gap in the evidence. For a long time, the honest answer to when did humans start wearing clothes was a shrug. Scientists did have a few side clues. There are ancient stone tools that look suspiciously well-suited for scraping hides, cleaning the fat and flesh off an animal skin, which is exactly what you must do to turn a raw skin into something wearable. And there are cut marks on animal bones in patterns that suggest carefully for meat, particularly around the paws, right where you'd cut to peel a hide off cleanly. Those hint at hide working going back a very long way. Then there's the needle. Bone and ivory needles with a tiny hole drilled through one end that appear in the fossil record tens of thousands of years ago. And the needle is a big deal because it marks the jump from draping to tailoring. A hide thrown over your shoulders is better than nothing, but heat pours out of every gap. Sew that hide into a fitted shape with closed seams, sleeves that grip the wrist, layers, and suddenly you have something that genuinely holds warmth. The needle is the difference between a blanket and a coat, but needles only tell us about good clothing. Something much simpler must have come long, long before. And to find that, science needed a completely different kind of clue, which is where the lice come in. Real quick, if you're enjoying this, do me one small favor and hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about the surprising truth of how our ancestors really lived, and there's a new story every week. That's it, back to the lice. I want you to appreciate how clever this is, because it might be my favorite piece of scientific reasoning in all of prehistory. Humans are hosts to lice. And here's the crucial detail. There is more than one kind. There's a louse that lives on the head, in the hair. And there's a separate kind, body lice, that live not on the skin, but in clothing. They cling to fabric and fibers, and they come out to feed. That's their entire habitat. No clothing, no home. Now think about what that means. Body lice could not possibly have existed before clothing existed. There was nowhere for them to live. Which means the moment humans started regularly wearing something, a brand new living space appeared out of nowhere. A warm, sheltered, permanently attached environment right next to a food supply. And in evolution, an empty niche does not stay empty. Some head lice moved in, adapted, and gradually became a separate family line. So here's the trick. Since we can compare the DNA of head lice and body lice and estimate roughly how long ago the two family lines split apart, we can date the appearance of clothing without ever finding a single scrap of it. The lice are the receipt, and when researchers ran that comparison, the answer came back deep, considerably older than the oldest needles, on the order of 100,000 years or more, with some estimates pushing further back still. The exact numbers are genuinely debated, and different studies land in different places, so nobody should pretend this is settled to the decade. But the shape of the answer is remarkable. Humans have been wearing something for a very long time, long before tailoring, long before needles, long before anything you'd recognize as a piece of clothing. And I just love the method. Clothing left no trace of itself, so scientists went and interviewed the bugs. Somewhere out there is a researcher whose entire contribution to human knowledge was noticing that a bug's address could date an invention. That's beautiful work. Now here's where Doris gets more interesting than we got cold, so we made coats. Because that's the obvious reason and it's true, but it is nowhere near the whole picture. Clothing is armor. Being bare-skinned isn't just cold, it's fragile. Skin gets cut, scratched, bitten, sunburnt, and blistered. Thorns, rocks, insects, sun, and rough ground all take a toll on a naked animal that has no protective coat. A hide wrapped around you is a shield, not just a jumper. And the same goes for your feet. A foot wrapping is one of the great unsung inventions because your feet are your survival, and a cut on the sole of a foot in a world with no medicine is a genuine crisis. Something as simple as a piece of hide between your skin and the ground is a serious upgrade in life expectancy. Clothing is a tool for carrying things. This one gets missed constantly. The moment you're wearing something, you can tuck things into it. You can tie a hide into a sling, a pouch, a bundle. And carrying capacity is enormous in a world where you have to move everything by hand, how much food you can bring back, how far you can travel, whether you can carry a baby and a day's foraging. Clothing quietly doubled as luggage. This might be the biggest one of all, and it's the reason we're still doing it long after we invented central heating. Because think about it. You are right now in a heated building with a working heater. You have no thermal need for what you're wearing. But you didn't wander out this morning in nothing, and it isn't only because of the law. What you wear says something. It says who you are, what group you belong to, what you do, what you can afford, how you want to be seen. Whether you tried today, that's ancient. Long before humans had needles, they were decorating themselves. Beads drilled from shell and animal teeth, pigment painted on skin, ornaments worn purely to be seen. The desire to signal through what's on your body appears very early and very again and again. So clothing arrives into a species that was already using its body surface as a billboard. Of course we made it meaningful. A particular pelt might mark you as a great hunter. A particular decoration might mark your family or your people. In a world with no writing, what you wore was your identity worn out loud. So the fur coat solved cold, but it also became a shield, a bag, and a badge. Clothing was never only clothing. Now, for the genuinely strange part, and this one is more guesswork than proven science, so I'll flag it clearly. But it's worth thinking about. Somewhere along the way, clothing stopped being optional. It went from useful to expected, and then, remarkably, to required. Today, in most of the world, clothes in public is not merely unusual, it's shocking. That's an extraordinary transformation for something we didn't have at all for most of our existence. And the interesting thing is that the feeling attached to it, embarrassment about being uncovered, cannot be older than clothing itself. It's not possible. You cannot feel exposed by the absence of a thing that hasn't been invented. So somewhere in our history, we invented a piece of clothing, and then we invented an entirely new emotion to go with it. We created the covering, and the covering created the shame, and the norms are famously variable. What must be covered, and how strictly, differs wildly between cultures and eras, which tells you it isn't a fixed biological instinct, but something learned. Something we absorb so early and so thoroughly that it feels natural, like it must have always been true. That's the deepest thing clothing did. It didn't just change what humans could survive. It changed how we feel about our own bodies, and that feeling now runs so deep that most people would rather face genuine hardship than be seen without it. Not bad for a bit of animal skin? Let's zoom out, because there's a bigger point hiding in all this. Story is the story of the thing humans do better than any other animal. We don't wait for evolution. Every other species solves its problems with its body. Cold? Grow thicker fur over thousands of generations. Predators? Grow armor or speed, camouflage over thousands of generations. The body is the only tool available, and biology is painfully slow. We broke out of that. We hit a problem, this climate will kill me, and instead of waiting for a genetic solution that would take 100,000 years, we solved it in an afternoon with a sharp stone and a dead animal. That's the human trick. Not strength, not speed, not even raw intelligence exactly. It's the ability to put on abilities we weren't born with, and once you see clothing that way, it's obviously the first in a very long line. A coat is borrowed fur, a shoe is a borrowed hoof, a knife is a borrowed claw, a boat is borrowed floating, glasses are borrowed eyesight. Every piece of technology you own is at bottom the same move our ancestors made when they first wrapped a hide around their shoulders. Identifying a thing your body can't do, and building the ability instead. So we are the naked animal, and that turned out to be, weirdly, one of our greatest strengths. Because having no coat forced us to invent one, and the species that learns to invent its own coat is the species that can go absolutely anywhere. Look at where we ended up. From bare skin in a hot African landscape to the top of mountains, across frozen oceans, into deserts, and eventually, genuinely, into outer space, wearing the most extraordinary piece of clothing ever built. A suit that carries its own air, temperature control, and pressure. A spacesuit is just the latest version of that first hide over the shoulders. Same instinct, same trick, same species. So tomorrow morning when you get dressed without thinking about it, maybe notice it for 1 second. You're performing a 100,000-year-old ritual. You are doing the thing that let a fragile tropical ape spread across an entire planet. You're not just putting on a jumper, you're putting on the single best idea we ever had.